the hiring criteria of most companies is completely wrong. While they think they are de-risking it, actually, the best salespeople that have got 2 to 3 years experience in fintech aren't looking for a job.
The average failure rate for new salespeople is somewhere between 70 and 80%, but your team's rate is only 5.
We were all just smart people with really good attitudes, and we learned the rest. I would hire for aptitude and attitude, and I would teach skills. People think by hiring a VP, they get all the skill set that they need. And the reality actually is sales is more complex than that. You have different skill sets with different people. So a VP, especially from a bigger company or later stage, is not going to know how to do a ground up build from zero.
Welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest is pretty interesting. He's been at the deep end scaling B2B tech firms, helping build the sales engine at one company where he took it from 0 to 250 and they exited for $750 million. He's both a sales specialist and an investor, so he sees the problem from both sides of the table. His name is Alex, and he's from the Salespeople. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Before this chat, you and I were talking about a shared statistic that I just couldn't get out of my head. The average failure rate for new salespeople is somewhere between 70 and 80%, but your team's rate is only 5. That is the literal difference between surviving and scaling. Can you kick off by telling us what that 70 to 80% failure rate looks like in the wild? Like, what are founders getting so fundamentally wrong when it comes to that?
Yeah, okay. So let's try and split it into a couple of parts. So firstly, I think hiring the wrong people. So it really interests me. So when we started the business, the reason that we actually started was because I sat around a pub table with all of my old team who have gone on to be very successful. There's CROs here, CCOs there, founders here. It's a team of superstars. But I assure you, that is not how we started. We had no experience. Very few of us had university degrees. And the conversation that we had was, if back then we'd applied to companies now, the fintech, etc., they wouldn't have hired us because we didn't have the right criteria for them. So I think first and foremost, the hiring criteria of most companies is completely wrong. And I think the way that it goes is they say, I want to de-risk this hire. The way I de-risk this hire is, let's get someone with a couple of few years experience in my sector who's got this type of background, and then they apply some of their bias over it to look for certain types of people, and that's what they get. Now, my prediction of that is that while they think they are de-risking it, actually, the best salespeople that have got 2 to 3 years experience in fintech aren't looking for a job, so they're not getting the good ones. And if they were, they wouldn't be going to that business at that stage because they could go to a different business for a lot more money. So I think hiring is the first issue. I think they hire the wrong people. And then secondly, I think they have a time constraint. So I think they don't onboard very well. And so those two things combined mean the chances of success are very low.
When you say hiring the wrong people, what founders listening to this podcast, if they're not in a position to bring in somebody like you, or maybe hire that superstar person, inverted commas, what should they be looking for when it comes to hiring a salesperson? Like if you were in their shoes and you were building scrappy, bootstrapping, all that lovely stuff, or even if you're at a different level of scale, what should they be looking for?
Well, let's play back the story of WorldFirst, right? So that we can make sure that we've been accurate about it. So WorldFirst, when we started that, fintech didn't exist or whatever, but that company went from 0 to $750 million exit with no dilution and no funding rounds. So that was grown through revenue. JQ and Nick were first-time founders. I was the first sales rep hired, and I had been doing sales, but I'd certainly never built a sales team. I hadn't done any of the things that I was hired to do. And when I hired Graham, who was my first hire, I'm pretty sure he was a professional gambler. He hadn't done any of those things before, and nor had Danny when we hired Danny, who ended up, head of EMEA. We were all just smart people with really good attitudes, and we learned the rest. We didn't have a really strong onboarding process. We didn't have, a 90-day. We just hired really smart people with really good attitudes. And that was really what drove most of that growth and success. So I would hire for aptitude and attitude, and I would teach skills.
I'm going to put you on the spot here slightly. It makes it more fun.
Yeah.
So
Great fun.
if we're talking about attitude, what should they look for? What are the top 3 attitudes if you were to reel off? Because attitude's a broad term, isn't it?
Okay. All right. Gosh, that is on the spot. Okay. So firstly, I'm looking for resilience. So I'm looking for someone that can get knocked onto their bum and get up and go again. So I'm looking for someone that needs it, not someone that wants to sit in a beanbag and say they work for a cool fintech. So almost like for me, the fact that they worked at a fintech and they only want to work at a fintech that's VC backed is actually the thing I'm out. Like, we were based in Battersea, and it wasn't particularly nice. And we were down a residential street in a back end, and we sat on boxes. It was not VC backed glamour. So I'm looking for resilience. I'm looking for drive. So I really want to know, why do they want this? And honestly, in our hiring criteria, I'm looking for a chip on the shoulder. I don't care whether you're rich or poor, good background. But I need to see some deep-rooted trauma reason that you need to be successful, because I just don't need you to come and have a go, and if it doesn't work, don't worry about it, pop off, get another job. I need you to have to make this work. So resilience, drive, and aptitude. I need for you to be able to learn really quickly, because what your job is today is different to what it will be tomorrow, and in a week, and in a month, and in a year. And also, I'm a small business, so I don't have time to spoon feed you, and I might not have a perfect onboarding program, but I need you to figure it out. If you did nothing but get that person and gave them nothing, they would have a better success rate than 70%, because they would just go, they would be smart enough, have enough drive and enough resilience to just go do it themselves. They wouldn't rely on you to solve it. I mean, again, using WorldFirst as the example, I started as an SDR, and I ended as a CCO with 250 people in the team. And that's not to call out me. There were plenty of people in my team that scaled exactly the same way. And they did that themselves. If there was a gap, they figured out how to fix it.
You talk about that concept of resilience, attitude. It almost sounds like a raw hunger to, the chip on the shoulder thing, that kind of fire in their belly. And I guess in a way, would you argue that having no onboarding process, and kind of throwing them in the deep end is a great way to kind of see who's got what you need? Or because it sounds like, and I'm just listening to what you said, obviously the established fintechs have their onboarding process, everything, the beanbag, as you said, all of the things are very sort of well thought through. In a way, it sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'm not in your shoes, but it sounds like you want to throw them into the deep end with less onboarding to kind of see how they get on, and then obviously help develop them as you go along. Is that fair, or am I completely off base?
No. So the way that we build sales teams is get the hire right and then intense 90-day onboarding. I think the difference between we did it just naturally at WorldFirst, whereas now we do it programmatically. But the difference of the way that we would onboard versus I think most companies, we do most on desk all day, every day. So we would literally, it was just a culture where we had a way of doing things and it was taught on desk. We had an open floor, do still now. And so, I can hear someone off course and I course correct it there and then. Where I think most businesses have more perhaps like a bit of program, a bit of this, and then off you go. And then at the end of the month, I tell you some feedback. And it's like, well, you're 29 days too late for that feedback to be useful. So then the onboarding time takes so much longer and you don't course correct as often. And so then the fail rate at end of month 3 is like, oh, well, you're not where I expected to be. So no, I think if you can, as we do, the challenge is time for most people. But if you can, then you want to hire those right people and then put them in an environment where they learn every single day. Like we coach our sales team every single day. If I had to choose, if I was a time-strapped founder and I was like, that sounds cute, but like I've got a lot to do and I haven't got someone dedicated, then I would, if I get the right person, they will be more successful than, getting the wrong person with a really strong onboarding program. If I had to choose.
If you had to choose, okay, cool. So it re-emphasizes your point about attitude and that sort of hunger element, but also I really like the idea that you're talking about this concept of keeping an ear to the ground. You know what I mean? Being around, hearing
it's
things
constant.
go on.
Yeah, it's constant. Like we sit, I have Angus, I have a team. We literally sit on desk and yes, we have programmatic onboarding, but a lot of what we do is on the floor training, constant coaching. Now that's scales. Again, if you think about like we went 0 to 250, a lot of that is by osmosis. I teach this person and then it just becomes a culture. It becomes an organic way that we are in this office. And so what you start to see, if you have the right people, the right incentives, they start to course correct each other because they want the other person next to them to be successful. So it's like a living, it just happens and it needs you far less because it's bred in all day, every day. But it takes, you talked about ADHD keeps coming up, I'm quite obsessive. So, I think we were quite, I think we were quite obsessive. For example, before we had HR, and you can verify this, I had a cling film role. And if one of our phones rang more than 3 times from a customer calling in to place a trade with us, I would hit someone on the hand with the cling film roll. That did get stopped when we got bigger. But I think to do that, it took obsession every day on like what good looks like. That's what I mean by onboarding. I don't mean like just a 30, 60, 90. I mean, I'm obsessed all day, every day on getting the sales team to be as good as they can be.
You're kind of like a sort of high performance coach, in the trenches all day, every day. And that's how you kind of carve it out. And it makes me think, right? So we touched on the WorldFirst element, and it's the kind of story that every founder listening will dream of achieving themselves, right? But obviously the audience doesn't want the polished version. They want the reality. Do not use cling film rolls, people. I know Alex would second that.
I agree. Don't do half of what we did. Yeah.
It's messy, scaling and building something. So, but don't do it.
Yeah, don't do
They obviously want the ups and downs that we talked about. So what is the biggest mistake you made scaling to that, from that 0 to 250 to that 750 million pound exit? What was it?
The biggest mistake that I personally made?
Yes, certainly from I suppose from a go-to-market sales point of view. Obviously, it sounds like you had many chefs in the kitchen, but I'm sure there were some stories of things that you might have wanted you and the team perhaps to have done differently, or something that you learned from that the founders can your wisdom, my friend. What is your biggest mistake?
Okay. Well, I mean, there would be some obvious things I could tell you in terms of, what I've taken into the new business, which is more about sort of systems and processes, but that's a bit boring. If you honestly want the honest answer, like at 43 versus when I was there at 25, then the honest answer of how I would do it different is I would pay more attention to how I'm looking after the mindset of the people around me. So, did we build a lot of revenue? Yes. Did it perhaps come at the expense of some of our mental health? And perhaps then that wasn't something that was so talked about. You know, going to the pub because it's been a stressful day was pretty cultural for us. And was that the healthiest way for a large number of young people to manage themselves?
Decompress.
Probably not. So,
Yeah.
now I put a lot of time and energy into making sure that, yes, sometimes we go to the pub, and that's a great thing, and it's great for building the culture. And actually, I think a lot of businesses don't do it, and sales people, they do enjoy that stuff. And I also really encourage going for runs, health, breath work. We do breath work sessions in the office, and I really try to stay quite close to how people are doing mentally, where perhaps when I was younger, I wasn't so interested in that, or for myself or for them.
In the brutal world of sales, where 70 to 80% is kind of the normal failure rate, which means only 20% in normal circumstances survive or succeed or swim. What you're talking about is the idea that there needs to be a balance between coaching, performance management, and looking after the well-being of the individual.
Yeah, exactly. So I think back then I was unknowingly, whatever is the word, smart enough is the nice way to say it. Ruthless enough would be another, to correlate, if I do this, what is the outcome? And the outcome that I want is more revenue. So, threatening someone, I'll give you a really good example that I did well then and still hold now. It fascinates me that you could have someone performing really well and then, they come off the curve a bit, and you give them the kind of, look, it's been 2 bad months. If you hit the third, you're fired. That's kind of interesting because it's quite standard on a sales floor. I was talking to someone about this the other day. They were in a business. They had someone that had hit 200% for 2 years, fell off for 2 months, and was fired on month 3, and was told on month 2, you will be fired on month 3. That's just how it is. That is an interesting way to deal with that problem, because if you have seen that someone can perform, then the question you should be asking yourself is, why has their performance stopped all of a sudden? Is it A, that they've magically lost all of their skill set? No. Or is it B, something is going on where their mind is not in the game? Could be home, could be something else. Maybe they've had a bad month and they're feeling it, and that is coming across in their calls. So I think mindset is underrated in sales performance. And I think often what happens is you start putting under pressure. Now, some people respond well to pressure. Some people, they just get in a fluster. The reality is every salesperson knows if you don't perform for 3 months, you're probably out the door or you haven't got long left. So you probably don't need to tell them that. Some might respond well to it, but many will just lose the plot. So actually the thing to do is to understand and to support mental health, and to get their mindset in a good place, because so long as they've got that and they've got the right skill set, they'll perform.
That's massive. I mean, I think especially in sales, and I'm going back to showing my age here, Glenn Ross or Boiler Room or any of that
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. And of
We
course,
used to
I
watch
worked
those.
in
We used to
sales and
watch those movies as a team. No joke. That was, that was what we did back then.
ABCs.
Yeah, get in the beer sale
um,
and watch a movie.
so, indeed. So the real cost of that mistake, in terms of you at 25 not really understanding the importance of mindset and mental health and supporting, and being very, very results driven, to now being in a position where your people are only failing 5% of the time, which means success is 95% certain, which I would say is pretty good, even for an antibacterial cleaner. Decent. So the one thing I'd say is, what was the real cost of that mistake, do you think, of not really understanding that mindset element when you were 25?
Probably cultural, I think. Yeah, probably cultural. I think that, probably the sales culture that worked in the business early on, perhaps wasn't as suitable to a growing up business, and to a business that needed to exit. So, I think there was some work to do to make sure that, yeah, that it, that the maturity of the sales floor grew up, and I probably didn't, do a great job of that, and just at a personal level, um, yeah, I think, yeah, did I look after everyone in my team as well as I could have? Probably not. So now I would be very mindful to make sure that, that, yeah, is important that we succeed, and but it's also important that we look after people and make sure that they're okay, not just pounds and pence. And actually, the two anyway are combined. If you're looking after someone's mental health and then, that'll pay back.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I know sales can be pretty brutal at times. I've seen it.
Yeah,
The
we try to, like, on the floor, now. I mean, we yeah, no, we would have done this at WorldFirst. We spend a lot of time having a lot of laughter to ease the pain of loss. Like if someone's had a bad call or whatever, or they've just lost a deal they've been working on, we try to help them recover quickly. It's the community has a really great opportunity to just get someone over that really quickly and move on.
If I was a founder, let's say that I've got product market fit, I'm scaling, I need to kind of start thinking about how to put in place the right support for salespeople, because sales is very much a roller coaster profession in many respects. What should I be doing? What should I put in place? You talk about that culture element, and just to remind you, you talked about how, back in the day it was the pub. Now it's kind of a mixture of getting people together for social events like that, but also to emphasize the health side. If you were advising a founder who maybe wasn't ready to bring on, somebody much more experienced, but maybe somebody much more junior, how could
Yeah.
they set them up for success in terms of that culture?
Okay, so let's okay. I mean, because it's an interesting one, right? Because there's the kind of the hiring junior and then hiring senior swing. So okay, so let's say I'm a founder, I've hired someone junior, what can I do? So firstly, don't hire someone with no experience, right? Because you haven't got time to teach them the basics of sales, right? So get someone with 2 to 3 years experience. Don't get a grad. Get someone with 2 to 3 years, they've got the basics of sales, so that you're not having to teach them sales, especially if you don't really know how to do sales. And most founders, they're going to hate this, are terrible at sales. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Uh, because, to be clear, it's not that they can't close deals. It's that, as founders, you can get away with just being visionary, and you're the founder and you have so much passion that you could just convince someone in. But a salesperson can't do that because they're not the founder, they're not you, they haven't got 10 years in the field, and they just don't have that ability to sort of just raw convince someone. Like we've launched our business. I'm going to get my first 10 customers by just going to convince them. But that is, and I can say I own this agency, and I promise you, so I think most founders are not good at sales in the way they think they are. And so, they're not really that well placed typically to train a salesperson. So firstly, hire someone who has some sales experience, 2 to 3 years. Next, if you're going to train them on something, train them on the product, on the service, on the competitors. Make them an expert, because if they're a decent salesperson, they will know how to convert that knowledge into power. Sales is really simple and people overcomplicate it. I need to understand your needs, i.e., my first boss told me. Can I swear on here or not?
You can.
My old boss said to me, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So shut the fuck up. And that was my first lesson. It stuck with me. So sales is very simple. You need to listen more than you talk. So ask a lot of questions and understand the customer, and then clearly and succinctly explain how you're solving something for them. And if you're not, just say that you can't. So if they understand the basics of that, your job is to deeply teach them the product and the service. And so that's the first thing. Then culturally, I would say the main thing, if I was a founder, what often happens is at some point they lose a bit of trust and they start sort of digging into and questioning. And the best thing culturally you can do is treat that salesperson like the font of knowledge and make them central to the business. They are your front line. They are learning. Every call they make is a data point. When they say something and they get pushed back, listen. Because what often happens is, and I hear it all the time, oh, my salesperson's crap, I'm going to replace them. And actually, when you dig into it, maybe they are, maybe they're not, but there's often some really good data in there. Actually, they're being told that the price is too high, or that the product doesn't quite work, or that the positioning isn't quite right. That salesperson actually is like your market feedback loop. So include them and listen to them, rather than the instant being, you just need to make more calls. If you want to upset someone in sales, that's the best way to do it, is just tell them to work harder, do more calls, and don't listen to them and don't involve them in the business because they're just a salesperson. If you want to really empower them, make them like your product marketing person. They are the font of knowledge.
I like that. And given that, I'm maybe drawing a conclusion from, but when you're talking about this idea of making them the font of all knowledge, the sort of feedback loop, that means from a cultural perspective, what do you think you should make sure that they've got in place rather than saying just make more calls? Is there anything in particular that founder hiring that junior could do as a practical thing to kind of make sure that's yeah. Sorry, go
Just
ahead.
make them a central part of the business. I think that's the point, right? Is that, if you get someone who has basic 2 to 3 years experience, you don't need to teach them the basics. If you've got the right attitude and aptitude, they'll figure it out. If you teach them how to be a product service expert, then they can sell. And then it's making them crucial to the success of the business, because I think perhaps some founders, kind of avoid the sales thing, and sales sits over there. I went to work in a business, I'll obviously leave them nameless, but they quite literally had the sales team one side of the building, they had the ops and tech the other, and they would do all hands where only half the floor was invited. And the sales team and the CS team needed to continue to work because, they just needed to work. That was just justification, but it was more like a class system. So to me, especially if I'm like a B2B business, that salesperson is gold to me. And I want them in the management meeting. I want their feedback. I want them, and I'm listening. Oh, you said that you didn't close that deal, rather than assuming that that's because they're no good. I really want to work with them to understand, why do you think we lost that deal? Oh, okay, it's more competitive than I realized. Okay, what do you think we can do? Again, if you've got the right people, they'll give you so much knowledge that you can improve your product, price, position, service. That's how we use our sales teams. They're like the canary down the mine.
It reaffirms your point about 2 ears, 1 mouth. That is a really powerful lesson, and it's a good setup for a question that I had for you, actually, about the mistakes you see founders making today. So you've taken that experience, and now you're spotting patterns, right? The biggest one that I see on a regular basis is the VP of sales dilemma. You know the story. Investors give cash and say, go hire a VP. Could you share a war story about a founder who maybe made the hire too early? What did it really cost them in terms of salary, time, morale, runway, etc.? And what could a founder learn from that?
Yeah. So yes, I can. Can't put a name on it, obviously, but yeah. So someone that we worked with recently had done exactly that, and then did the obvious swing after. So I can cover that because that's typically what happens is a swing between junior senior. So they had hired a VP. Now, actually, I thought this VP was one of the best ones I've seen, by which I mean on paper, when I saw that they hired a VP and I saw her CV, I thought, oh, this is going to be a car crash. She'd come from bigger company and VP level. So I thought there's no way that she's going to be rolling up her sleeves. She's not going to do any of the jobs that she needs them to do at this stage. But to be fair to her, she was quite happy to cold call and do loads of things. I thought there was no chance. But nonetheless, it didn't work out. And I think the challenge is people think by hiring a VP, they get all the skill set that they need. And the reality actually is sales is more complex than that. You have different skill sets with different people. So a VP, especially from a bigger company or later stage, is not going to know how to do a ground up build from zero for a start. In my team, I split sales out. I have SDRs, BDRs, AMs, AEs. They all have different skill sets. So a VP is likely to lean one way versus the other. If you're expecting them to just be able to come in and generate new business as well as do account management, as well as, it's unlikely their CV has that. Actually, they will probably index to one or other. And they won't likely know how to build demand generation. So they won't know how to get any leads. On top of the fact that while that one was happy to roll up sleeves, most will say, where's my team? Where's my budget? Where's my demand gen? So the first thing that they're most likely going to do is spend more money than the already high budget. So yeah, I mean, the challenge with that is, yes, it's very expensive. So what's that going to cost you? I guess 150 grand. The challenge with it is that finding them takes longer, and then working out the failure takes longer. So on average, that will be at least 9 to 12 months.
I was just going to say, like, when you were talking about that 9 to 12 months, of course, you got to include the fact that anybody who's good probably is already employed. And then you've got the whole process
Probably a 3-month notice on board. Yeah.
Yeah. On top of all the interviews beforehand, and, on and on we go. So, yeah, it
Exactly.
could be a year.
I'd say
from what I
think
understand,
a year is reasonable. Yeah, 9 to 12 months. I think 12 months is entirely plausible. So then what is your burn rate for 12 months? Because it's not just 150K. It's that within that year, you have not hit your targets and you've continued to burn. So yeah, the cost is really substantial. It's actually the reason I started the business, because WorldFirst, I realized after coming out and investing in 20 companies, after never seeing a dilution round, I watched so many dilution rounds on this type of mistake where they've raised 18 to 24 months cash and then they've burnt 12 before they're actually even getting into making the right hire. They've gone through the VP, that's a year, and they've wasted a year because they couldn't. And then often what happens is, this company have done exactly this. They've done the exact opposite swing. They've gone really junior and then left them to it. And and then they've made the third and final mistake, which is they now have thrown more headcount at the junior problem. So they've gone from 1 to 3 junior headcount, thinking that headcount will fix the problem, but it won't.
What is the fix? Is it because if we're talking about going from that fluctuation from the junior, which we talked about, to this very senior VP of sales, and wasting a year, possibly 18 months, because if you've got to go through the same rhythm again, you're in quite a deep hole financially.
Yeah.
So what's the fix?
Well, it depends how you ask. I mean, my obvious answer is that I launched a business to fix that, because I do think that what exists is challenging. So, we obviously solve that problem, but let's remove us and say, okay, no, that's not on the table. How would I
If
solve
they can
for
afford you, Alex?
I'm very, very reasonable. How would I solve it? So look, I think that typically the VP is not the right hire, and I would rather hire a couple of juniors. And the first hires that I would make would be what I would call a go-to-market associate. So this is someone that can learn and build demand generation systems. So this is using email outbound, list building, and Clay. And, look, the way I do that is I hire a generalist for like 40K, and I put them under my head of GTM engineering, and I train them for 90 days. So if you want to do that, come do that. If you don't have budget for that, honestly, if you hire someone with a decent brain and put them on a Clay course for like 100 quid, they can figure out how to do that. It's not rocket science. We've had to go and figure it out for ourselves. And then as a founder, I would stay incredibly close to that person, because most of what makes that demand generation system work, once you've worked out how to send an email and how to build a Clay table, which is not rocket science, is actually more about ICP refinement, messaging, positioning. It's actually working out who is my customer. Yes, I know.
I get excited about this part because this is obviously touching on the message side, which you're completely right about, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to interrupt your flow. I got excited. Carry on.
No, I mean, we built frameworks on this, and we give it away for free, and there are plenty of people that do the same. So honestly, if you got someone with a good brain and gave them like Instantly and Clay, and put them on some course, or just sent them into Jesus, go to LinkedIn and search GTM. I mean, there's no shortage of free. If you say the word go, I'll send you my whole framework for free. Like, someone will teach you how to do
the usual stuff. Yeah.
Like, someone will teach you how to do demand generation for free. So hire someone with a good brain, who can learn quickly, doesn't know how to code, but like could easily get in a Clay table and work out how to spin up an email domain and build a list, and just task them with solving that, and doing some amount of outbound. And then honestly, as a founder, I would staple myself to that person to just keep testing different message ICP until I worked out who's my customer, what do I say to get them. And, if I'm closing those first 20 deals, or until I get repeatable, and then I would hire someone to come and do the sales. I mean, that is what I would do. It's really not overly complex, but most people don't put the time and energy into it and kind of get what they think is ICP, which is like 200 headcount, and this sector, which is not an ICP. That's basic firmographic data.
It sounds like what you're saying is that rather than buying the olive tree that's already matured, plant the seeds, lay the groundwork with your juniors, get them to work it all out to a level, and then you can start putting in the elements that maybe make it a more professional sales operation, to develop that culture, to build that VP of sales. And of course, if they're in a position to be able to bring in one of your plucky, ready to go, super fast growth olive trees, then they can. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So my entire business model is basically just programmatically repeating what we did at WorldFirst. So at WorldFirst, we did not ever hire fintech or experience or banking experience, or we just hired aptitude and attitude, and then sort of, every day showed them how to do a thing. Then these tools did not exist, like Clay and Isley, whatever. So, we plug that into our system. But I can tell you now, my playbook, which I'm doing like all day, every day now, is company comes to me, I will hire a GTM associate, which is just a good generalist. And then we teach them how to use Instantly and Clay and do demand generation. And then we hire a 2 to 3 years experience salesperson. I don't care about sector experience. They don't need to be fintech. They just need to pass some aptitude and attitude tests, and then teach them deeply to become a product expert, and then just make sure that you make them feel like they're part of a founding team and work really closely with them. And that will give you what you need.
So to summarize for listeners, and this is a good test of my 2 ears, 1 mouth. What Alex said was, get the demand generation side with a junior, add in a 2 to 3 year sales experience person, and build from there with product knowledge. Make them feel loved, appreciated, treat them like the feedback loop, the important person that they really are, and they could help build out your fantastic sales team. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And, and stay really close to them, to be obsessive about working out who is the customer, what do I say, what works, what doesn't, and really be systematic about just keep testing to work out, how do I find a scalable, repeatable sales motion? Because I think like one of the most common mistakes at early stage, is like, oh, I got a few referrals, I got a bit of this, I got a bit of that, the close rates are all over the shop, the average contract value, my money is like this. Well, firstly, that's very difficult to manage if I don't have much money. And secondly, no one wants to fund that. Everyone wants to fund a clearly predictable, repeatable, scaling revenue. And the only way to do that is to be quite obsessive about who is the customer, what channels work, how do I get them, and how do I just have a consistent sales process. It doesn't sound very sexy, but it's super duper important.
Listeners, you have heard the unsexy way to build a consistent sales process that makes things much more appealing, not only in terms of building consistent revenue, but also attracting investors. So if I may ask, to follow on from that point, do you think, or I shall rephrase it, how often is a sales problem actually a clarity problem in disguise? Because you talked about the ICP, you talked about the product knowledge, the market knowledge. How often is a sales problem a clarity problem, like not understanding those elements?
Pretty often. I mean, like honestly, and this is so my observation is this: people come in trying to, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. When I chat to founders, most of the time is burned by thinking, oh, that's the problem, that's the problem, I think it was, that's the problem. And the harsh truth is it's probably all of them. We have this thing called the method. It's 52 steps that we go through, everything from commission structures to who you're hiring to how you're onboarding to the ICP build out to, and the honest answer is like it's all of them, in different degrees. I'm yet to meet, we typically work with 1 to 10 million on the kind of full build out, whereas the bigger companies that we work with is much more about just the kind of hiring and onboarding piece. They've got a lot of the other stuff by that stage. But, if we're talking about earlier stage founders, 1 to 10 million, normally it's all of it. It's actually deeply understanding personas. It's the channels. It's the messaging. It's the sales process. It's the people. It's the onboarding. It's a little bit of all of it is coming together to not be on point. Sorry, it's not the most ideal answer, I know, but it is the answer.
Well, I'm gonna nail you down here, buddy, because we're near the end of this episode. But the clear thing, and I appreciate your time, and I know everybody will benefit from this. So, if we had a dashboard, right, and there was one red light flashing, what is that thing that would be the clearest sign that a sales process is underperforming, not just a salesperson?
Okay, let me read back, make sure I've got it. So I've got one red flashing light that tells me the function as a whole is not working. Inconsistent
well,
revenue.
no, so like, okay, cool. Well, okay, so yeah, that's fair. That's actually a very good one.
Inconsistent revenue, because that could be ICP, that could be, channel, because channels will have varying ICP fit, which typically leads to very lumpy revenue. They might not have worked back the ICP to solve for sales cycle speed, which is really common at an early stage. So it's like, oh yeah, we're going after these guys. It's great. It's like, yeah, the sales cycle is like 9 months, dude. So that's not going to work for you right now. We got to find something different. But it can also be if you've got salespeople coming and going and churn and slow ramp times and then lots of turnover. Again, you get some deals and then they fall off, or they get one person that managed to master it, but the last 3 hires can't do what that one person is doing. These are all very common, but the one flashing light will be that the revenue is like this instead of like that.
And so I guess what you're saying is the founder might think 1 month they've cracked it, and the next month I was going to use a word that rhymed with it, but I won't say it.
Yeah.
They're the other way around. They haven't cracked it. Once you spotted those signs, you mentioned your team builds repeatable GTM systems that actually help drive the sales. For somebody listening, what would be the best way? And I appreciate your time, and we may do a follow-up episode because I'm sure I'll get questions at some point, only if you're up for it. What does that mean in terms of like, if somebody wanted to engage with you, I can link in the show notes down below as well. Feel free to get in touch with Alex. Thank you so much, Alex from the Salespeople, for joining us today and sharing so many interesting points about how to hire, how to scale, how to spot problems, and to help you all do it if you're in a position where you think something might be wrong, but you don't quite know what. Thank you very much, Alex, for your time today.